Hey everyone, thanks for staying on. We have Daniel with us from Bags. He's the CEO at Bags. In this session, Daniel is going to share tips on supply chain financing and optimizing your debt stack for a successful holiday season. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Daniel.
Thanks, Francesca. Thank you, everyone, for spending the time with me today. Today, I'm just going to be talking a little bit more about the element of a debt stack and how to be thinking about debt from the lens of the holiday season and how to drive towards success. A little bit of background on Bags and what we do. We are a financial growth platform that helps brands manage their finances with end-to-end bookkeeping accounting and optimizes their finances for the purposes of accessing equitable debt products to help them grow. We are very, 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 I'd say, obsessed with the correlation between using debt to unlock revenue and tighten up your cash conversion cycle, which I'll be talking a little bit about today. And then, of course, I'll give a little bit more of information about Bags towards the end. So optimizing your debt stack. So typically, where I want to start is just to talk a little bit about like the elements of, being a CPG business in the holiday season, right? Typically, this is a period where brands make the majority of their revenue. In some cases, it's up to 60% of their annualized revenue are made, really in a 2.5 month period, right? So for you as a business owner, I'm sure many of you are here thinking, wait a second, I know this is going to be a peak for me. I want to try to maximize as much as possible and not leave any sort of revenue on the table. But the one reality of running a business, a product-based business, is that you're faced with this element of a cash conversion cycle, which I'll talk a little bit about, where you're forced to decide between putting your dollars into things like inventory, right? And eventually that inventory will come back in terms of revenue. That cycle could take anywhere between 2 months on the low end to 4 to 6 months on the higher end, right? So that element of cash conversion cycle is something that we try to look at really, really, really in depth with every single company that we work with, because if you can optimize it appropriately and ensure that you aren't sinking as much cash in things like inventory that take and have a long cash conversion cycle, we can turn that into what and use the leftover cash for what? Marketing spend, right? Like at the end of the day, whether you're selling through retail or you're selling online, right? It's all about moving products, all about selling and optimizing around sales. I'm sure, and I know you've already had a few different speakers talk about different products that could help you. So I won't spend too much time on optimizing marketing today. Okay, so I think I always like to start with the lens of like thinking about funding options. What are they? How should you be thinking about the different types of capital? And we always like to say revenue is the best way to grow your business, but the core reality is sometimes you need additional capital and it takes a while for that revenue to hit your bank account. So how do we think about optimizing that? And then when you sort of go down the lens, you got debt as an option. For 99% of businesses, this ends up being the primary form of external capital they use for growth. And then equity, right? Like that's really for your venture-backed business. I'm sure a few people on this call are, but it's really about ensuring that you're using the right dollars for the right use case. So typically what we see is using equity dollars to fund things like inventory is like selling your car to buy gas, right? And specifically within this environment, venture capital firms aren't necessarily as willing to fund things like inventory using your equity dollars. Those dollars should really be used for long-term investments in your business that take a little bit longer to manifest in terms of revenue. So for things like payroll, for things like R&D, for things like continued product development, but for everything else, we really want to think about debt. Next, just in terms of sort of grounding ourselves in this sort of flywheel of a debt stack, but the flywheel that we like to think about with all the businesses that we work with is it's all about sort of three things. One, it's like if there's an opportunity to maximize revenue and strengthen your cash flow, which is what I'm sure all of you are thinking about in terms of the holiday season, we start there, right? And then from there, we say, okay, well, what if, and if we were able to secure additional capital, securing the bag, securing debt financing, where could we use that capital to invest to what? Drive more revenue and strengthen the cash flow position. This is the flywheel that successful brands are using, that we've seen them use to unlock more revenue and unlock more growth. So Cash conversion cycle. I know I talked a little bit about it, but it's extremely relevant for specifically this holiday season. Because what we're going to do in a second is talk specifically about the debt stack that we see brands using and prepare to use this holiday season that actually they're in the process of using right now. So the whole goal when looking at debt is how do we tighten up this cash conversion cycle, right? How long it takes for dollars to turn from inventory into cash flows from sales, right? And so what we typically try to do is break down and ensure that businesses are using the right types of debt financing for the right use case in order to unlock their cash flow and tighten up their cash conversion cycle. What that looks like in practice, right, especially when approaching the holiday season, is just in terms of inventory, rather than taking cash out of pocket, look at something called inventory financing, right? We've got 24 partners who operate within this space in order to ensure that you're not having to do a large outlay of cash into inventory. And in reality, you can get that financed. As always, the thing to consider is, will it have an impact on your margin? The short answer is yes. And that in reality could be anywhere between 1% to 2% on the low end to 4% to 6% on the high end. But when you think about the fact that you in turn can keep that cash that you currently have in your bank account and use that extra capital for the purposes of marketing and moving product this holiday season, it ends up oftentimes being worth it. The other things that we look at are PR financing or factoring. That's specifically when you are expanding into retail or you have invoices that need to be paid in order to ensure that you get paid faster, or you have more dollars left over so that you can move product through that retailer, right? Like the name of the game when it comes to retail, obviously one is focus, but two is how quickly. It's not about getting products on shelves. It's about getting products off shelves. And that has everything to do with marketing and how you market your product, activate around that opportunity, and move that product off shelves. The last two things that I always like to mention when we think about this element of a debt stack, right? So we've got the 3 products at the top, which are really, really good at tightening up that cash conversion cycle. And then there are the other things, right? Longer term investments in the business, a larger outlay of cash, so that you can really, really invest in things like marketing and payroll and business expansion. We'll look at term loans and lines of credit. And what might be a little bit surprising to you is that in reality, it's not a one or. Often we see a lot of businesses and we help businesses make sure that they actually have all of these products in place to tighten the cash conversion cycle and help deal with the inevitable business seasonality that is coming post holiday season, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So term loans and lines of credits are really, really good for that. But if you're looking for something to help solve specifically cash conversion cycle, I would look at the 3 products above. If you're completely unaware of what PO financing or factoring is, that's okay. I'm more than happy to spend some time with anyone post call and give you the breakdown of the 2. But by doing these things and by building out this debt stack, this is really what will help maximize your cash flow and maximize your potential ROI this holiday season. So, question I always get, which is like, am I ready for a loan? Like the first piece is, are your docs ready? Do you have all your financial documentation prepped and ready to go? That is the number one thing that will slow down a lending process, right? I'll talk about timing in a little bit, but second, like, am I one? My gross margins should be profitable, but profitability is always considered, or pathway to profitability is always considered. Some of the shorter term financing products often don't care as much about profitability. They care more about the retailer or the inventory and how much you move product. Credit score above 600, it typically helps a lot. And then generating at least $5,000 a month with revenue, that's kind of your floor. So just to move into a little bit of a case study with a company that we've worked with for some time, this is a really, really good example of how someone can build a debt stack to really maximize revenue, especially focus on the holiday season. So we met Haley from One with Swim. She was doing about $40,000 in 2022. She was having trouble getting rejected from certain lenders, raising equity capital, and she was approaching holiday season with not enough inventory to meet demand. We worked with her. We realized she had a $14,000 purchase order. That $14,000 purchase order, we ended up financing through a partner of ours called Daintree. That $14,000 allowed her to unlock another $100,000 worth of revenue just in the holiday season because she had the inventory in order to meet demand. Since then, while working with her, she's accessed over $350,000 of debt across 3 different financial products. So she had a debt stack. And in turn, she was able to grow her business from $40,000 to $1.25 million in revenue this year, right? So there is a direct correlation between how you leverage that capital and how you can optimize the growth of your business. I know I'm at 5 minutes. I'm getting to the last couple things. So things to remember, specifically right now, like action items. What do we do? What should we be thinking about? First, it's not too late to secure financing to help fund this holiday season and shorten your cash conversion cycle. When I say not too late, I mean literally the time is now, right now, within the next couple of weeks, to ensure that you have the ability to tighten up the cash conversion cycle, have dollars left over to market, and can really move as many products as possible and hit and exceed your goals this holiday season. 2, good financial management increases your likelihood of growth and increases your likelihood of getting access to debt capital, right? That's something that we do here at Bags. We can help you with the financial management best practices. And then 3, getting ahead of Q1. Sometimes people say, oh, well, I just crushed it in Q4 and I know Q2 is going to be slow. This isn't really the right time to be pursuing financing. It's actually a great time to be pursuing financing, even if you don't need dollars right now, and you might need dollars next year. Coming off a strong revenue month will increase your available credit. It's always good to look at financing before you need it. So just quick recap on Bags. We're a financial growth platform. We'll help optimize your accounting and bookkeeping. We'll also help give you fractional CFO level insights and help curate your funding offerings. And then like really at the end of the day, we're a one-stop shop to help scale your business with good debt. We'll help you do the financial cleanup. We'll help you manage your books. We'll help you really, really, really understand how to build that debt stack and maximize your cash flow so that you can hit your targets, and then help you manage that debt effectively over time. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in learning more. We're here to support. Thank you so much, ShipBob, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I feel like you outlined a lot of stuff that brands maybe don't think about when they start a brand. No one really taught us financial education, even in school when it comes personally. So I think this is an area that everyone can really learn from. I know we have maybe 2 minutes left. So if someone has a question, pop it in the chat, but I'll just throw a question to you right now. Is there a specific size of a customer you work with, or is anybody open to work with Bags?
Absolutely. So most of the businesses that we work with are they've been around for at least a year, and they're generating ideally at least the first $100,000 worth of revenue. We work with a couple who are slightly smaller. And then most of our customers are kind of between that couple $100,000 to 5-6 million mark. We do work with businesses up to about $20 million. So we really do work with a range.
Awesome. I feel like this covers a lot of people on the call then, because sometimes the smaller brands just starting out are left out a little bit, but they're the ones that need the most help.
And those are the ones where if the work is done well at the beginning and the practices are put in place and we're really, really intentional about that debt stack, that can really set businesses up for success over time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't think we have any more questions in the chat. So if you have questions for Bags, they do have a booth. So pop a question in there and their team will reply back to you. And with that, thank you, Daniel, and we'll see everyone in the next session.